Stay tuned. Coming up is my interview with Ron Warren, Chief of the Unmanned Emergency Services of North Central Pennsylvania. Hello and welcome to the Situational Awareness Matters Show, episode 391. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SA Matters mission is simple. We want to help you see the bad things coming in time to prevent bad outcomes. Today's feature segment is sponsored by Gassaway Virtual Training. There are 33 online training programs there for you to choose from. Some of the programs are live events presented virtually, and some of them are pre-recorded programs. To learn more, visit samatters.com website and click on the Virtual Training tab. After today's interview, I have a couple of big announcements, including the release of a new book. So stick around. Okay, let's jump into our feature segment, our interview with Ron Warren, Chief of the Unmanned Emergency Services Unit of North Central Pennsylvania. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Situational Awareness Matters Show. Today I have as my guest Ron Warren, who his topic that we're gonna speak about is unmanned and remote technology used in support of public safety. I met Ron at a program that I did in Tioga County, Pennsylvania, and Ron was in the class. And after the class, he come up when we were having a conversation, and he was sharing how the topic that I was teaching was aligned well with the passionate work that he's doing on helping first responders using unmanned remote technology. And we ended up talking about 20 minutes, and I realized this would be a good topic to have on the show to allow our listeners and viewers to see what they're doing there that is creative toward helping first responders improve situational awareness. So Ron, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rich.
Why don't we start out with a little bit of your background, your backstory, so to speak. I think you told me you'd been kind of in the first responder space since like the early to mid 90s. So there's some build up to how you got to where we are today. Go ahead and share that.
Yeah, so I became an EMT at 16 in 1994. So the listeners can do the math, but for quite a while now. And kind of took a change in direction and went in the military and did 4 years active duty in the military. And then, so that was all pre 9/11, and then went back kind of into public safety and emergency services after 9/11, and kind of went through, did some hazmat stuff for a while, and then became a paramedic. Deployed a couple times in there and became a flight medic, and then eventually, I guess, had enough of healthcare and became a police officer. And I work as a law enforcement officer now for the state.
Okay. And has all of your service been generally in the Eastern Pennsylvania area?
So we're North Central Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And yeah, so as far as emergency services, public safety, yeah.
Okay. So how did you first get introduced to unmanned technology? I mean, at some point, it didn't exist, and then it did, and it kind of was something that was sort of on the fringe. Maybe the military was using it much more than public safety was, but at some point you had to get that first connection with it that made you think there's something here with this. How'd that happen?
So when drones really first kind of became attainable for the normal person, we bought one, and just it was basically a toy at that point. I mean, it was a good DJI drone that I still have, but I don't fly it now. At that point, that was probably 2015. So there was no license requirement at that point. People just bought them wherever, and it was kind of a free for all. I used it back then. Shortly after I got it, I was asked to use it for some public safety work, just one isolated incident, and that was kind of the end of it. And I kind of set it on a shelf for a couple years, and then probably 2020, I started looking at them again, started messing around with it again, using that same drone, and then upgraded to a drone that had thermal imaging on it, and it just kind of took off from there a little bit more than I expected.
Yeah, well, it's certainly growing. The technology is growing in popularity in the public safety circles for sure. But you guys are doing something unique there, and we're going to talk about that here in just a moment. But how is the unmanned technology being integrated into public safety agencies and operations now, in the 2023 space compared to maybe what it was like, you stumbled upon it, you play with it a little bit here and there, but it's becoming more integrated now, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's becoming almost a standard now. You're seeing across the US more progressive departments that are integrating them directly into their department, and we're doing that a little bit differently, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So, I mean, there and the unmanned technology, everybody thinks about just UAVs or drones, but there's a lot of other stuff going on too. So you have the air, so the drones, the normal drones that you think of, but you also we have underwater capability, and there's land capability, and we're using them for everything. So when I first started, when I kind of jumped into the public safety realm and saying, like, to the local agencies, hey, we have a thermal drone that we can use. Everybody, including myself, immediately thought of for searches, but we didn't think beyond that. So we quickly found out that our first call was for a search. We used the thermal drone for a search, and it just kind of progressed from there. But then we had some really serious flooding, and we ended up using the drone for a couple different occasions to do damage assessments, so that the county would have pictures and video and real-time data on how extensive the damage was from these floods. And that was on a couple different occasions. That was really where we started thinking outside the box of just the searches. And, from there, they're being used, and not just here, but everywhere. They're being used for search and rescue, the disaster response, like we just talked about, confined space. So that's not necessarily drones, but there are some drones doing that. A lot of law enforcement using drones now, and unmanned technology, and firefighting, and the list just goes on. So,
I can understand now why, when we talked earlier, that you used the term unmanned technology, because I think of unmanned technology as drones, but now you kind of broaden my perspective when you talk about it having a land use, an underwater use, and now the term unmanned technology has a broader understanding to me, other than just calling it drones, because drone, or the aerial part of it, is just one component to this whole concept of using unmanned devices. You mentioned earlier, when you first got yours and you were flying it around, you were saying, like, there was no requirements and licensing and stuff. I am vaguely under the understanding, because I really don't have much firsthand experience with it, but I have a vague understanding that the use of at least unmanned aerial devices are now fairly regulated. I don't know if it's FAA or who's regulating it, and maybe can explain why it is, what was the need for it being regulated, and how, what are the regulations now, and can an average citizen like myself just go buy and fly a drone around, or do I have to be licensed? And I hope I don't inspire anybody to do dumb things, but talk about the regulations behind it now.
Okay, yeah. So even for public safety, we'll kind of stick to aerial drones because the others are fairly unregulated at this point. The air drones, UASs, are highly regulated. Probably more than what you would imagine. So it's regulated by the FAA. They have the main jurisdiction for drones. They're treated as an aircraft. They're considered an aircraft. And if you're using it professionally, so for public safety, or if you're using it for a business, then it's different than if you're using it like you buy your kid a drone for Christmas and they're going to play with it. They have a different set of standards because they're not making money with it. They're not using it for a professional purpose. So as far as for the professional purpose, or if you're doing anything where there's compensation, it's covered under the FAA Part 107 rules now. And basically what that means is, so there's actually two different ways. So the simplest way is Part 107. You get your Part 107 license. It's a remote pilot license, and that gives you the authorization to fly drones for professional purpose, including public safety. And there's the whole complex set of rules that go with that, like when you can fly, what the weather minimums are, all those things. And in order to break those rules, you have to get waivers from the FAA. Otherwise, you're in violation. The other way that some departments, and really, I think they're starting to get away from this, but a lot of departments are using what's called a COA, a certificate of authorization, and that's from the FAA. And there's some big differences with that between having the Part 107 license. So the COA gives you a list of things that you can do, when you can fly, stuff like that, but it allows departments to self-certify pilots. So let's say our department, we don't want to spend the money to get everybody certified as a pilot, then we could technically go through the FAA, get a certificate of authorization for government or public safety use, and then we could self-certify in-house and say that, so-and-so is certified to fly the pilot or fly the drone. He's met all the requirements, and we're signing off on that. That's not something that we're doing, but a lot of departments are doing that.
Now, with this licensing, is there like testing requirements, or you just read the rules and regulations and sign something that says, okay, I've read them, I'll abide by them? I mean, it's to get a driver's license, you got to pass a test. Right. Is there testing?
Yep. Yeah, so there is. So you actually have to go take a pilot test. I don't remember how many questions it is right now. I took it in 2021. You have to meet a minimum, you have to get a minimum grade on it. And it covers all kinds of topics from a lot of weather to wind conditions based on terrain, to flight characteristics based on the weight of the aircraft. It's very aircraft oriented, pilot oriented, map reading, communications. So it's pretty all inclusive. They've updated that test since then to include some night flying stuff that's changed. So okay. There's no hands-on test yet.
And then do you have to be recertified after a period of time?
So now they do a recurring, it's like EMS Con Ed. So you do a recurrent class every 2 years, or within that 2-year window, and it resets you for another 2 years.
Okay. And these are federal regulations, not Pennsylvania regulations, right?
Correct. Yep.
Is there any state regulations around it, at least in Pennsylvania?
So there are some minimal state regulations. It falls under Department of Transportation in Pennsylvania. I don't know if it's the same in every state, probably not, but that's what it falls under. The same as aviation falls under DOT here in the state, but the majority of the regulations are done federally by the FAA.
Okay. So when we were talking, when I was in Tioga County, the one thing that really caught my interest was that while you're a police officer, it's not your police department that has these devices that are operating as an independent policing organization, but you actually formed an organization called North Central Pennsylvania Unmanned Emergency Services that is standalone from any police or fire or EMS or any other agency. So talk to us a little bit about what that organization is, what they do, and why it was so important for you all to form a standalone organization versus one that fell under the jurisdiction of a policing agency or an independent fire agency.
Yeah, so we basically took a different approach for a variety of reasons. And yeah, you can think about our department so our department is dispatched by the county. It's a volunteer department, just like any other of the fire departments we have in the county. The only difference is that, well, there's a lot of differences, but as far as that goes, we're set up the same. You know, we have the bylaws, we have chief officers, we have a secretary, treasurer, all that stuff. So it's very similar in composition to a volunteer fire department. And then we all have our normal full-time jobs that we, you know, just like any other volunteer firemen or EMS or anything like that. So some reasons that we formed it as a standalone department, a lot of them go back to those FAA rules, and they're very specific and can be pretty complex. Now, there are a lot of very successful drone or unmanned programs within fire departments in Pennsylvania and across the nation. So we just chose to do it in a different manner. We didn't want to integrate into a department that was already established. We figured and we thought that starting our own department as a standalone was basically a fresh start, a clean slate, without any divided interests for funding or operations. So, and that's a big one. It might not seem like it would be a big deal, but the cost and the equipment maintenance and all that and the regulations that go into especially the drones, we don't have to compete with, hey, we need a new fire engine this year, or we need new SCBAs or turnout gear. We can completely concentrate our funding and any grants we get right towards exactly what we're doing. It's a very small, narrow concept or equipment needs and stuff like that. So those are the big reasons.
How are you funded?
So through generosity right now. So eventually, so we meet all the requirements to be funded just like the fire departments are. As far as in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of state grants that come out just for fire departments or emergency services, rescue departments. So we've gone to great lengths to make sure that we fall in those requirements. One of the big things that's holding us back for the first 2 years here is the number of, it's very specific that you have to respond to a certain number of fire calls or vehicle accidents. So it's written very specific. And with us starting out and just like you and I thought initially, search and rescue, and that was it. We didn't get a lot of fire calls initially, but that's starting to pick up. We're actually added to box alarms now for fire calls. So we're hoping and we're setting our sights on 2024 to be able to be completely eligible for the state fire grants that other fire departments get. Right now, we're doing a lot of outreach. We're doing a lot of reaching out to charitable organizations and getting funding that way. Plus, we've done a ton of self-funding.
Mm-hmm. What does self-funding mean? Like money out of your pocket?
Yes. Yep. So the original drone and everything that we put into the first year came out of my pocket. And then now it's kind of transitioned. So the first year we started, it was part of an LLC that we had. And I mean me. We started it for the first year. We really didn't think it was gonna be anything that caught on. So we didn't put a ton of stuff into it. And once we saw that it caught on way faster than I ever expected. So then that was when I reached out. We got a group of like-minded people together. We formed a department, and with huge support from our local fire organizations, that there's no way we would be anywhere near where we're at right now without their support and their forward thinking. So
what's how much is the investment for a good quality professional drone, not the one that I'm gonna buy through Amazon to fly around my backyard, but I mean something that has the thermal imaging capability and the things that you all would use it for professionally? What's the range on the price of this from what to what, so we can have some context?
yeah, so the range is getting pretty wide now, but for a brand new thermal imaging drone, you're looking at least $5,000 to $6,000 for the minimum capable drone that has thermal imaging on it. And then all the way up to we're trying to put together funding now for it's about $20,000 for the whole setup. But that's a drone that's capable far beyond what the $5,000 drone would be. And then it's going to last several years instead of being outdated next year. So,
And when you're flying these, what's the range on them? Before you have to start to worry. I mean, do they go a quarter mile, a half mile? How far from the operator can they? And I would guess that's a function of the price that you invest in it as well. I don't know.
Yeah. So that's a big part of it. So that's the equipment capability it'll go way farther than the FAA will allow. So unless you get a waiver, the FAA says you have to have line of sight of that aircraft. So I need to be able to see the aircraft, see what it's doing, what direction it's going, make sure there's no other aircraft in the area, all those things. The drones they're capable now of going several miles. So with no problems. And then if for some reason you lose connection with the controller, they'll come back to that location and land.
Oh, okay. That was going to be my next question, is what happens if they fly out of the zone where you can actively control it. It just has like a homing device that just comes back into the docking point or something.
Yep. So you set when you take it there, it's just like an aircraft. You do a bunch of pre-flight checks and all that. And one of those checks is setting that home point. So as long as you're not, a big part of that is where that becomes a problem is if you're on a boat or if you're in a vehicle and you're moving. If you're staying at that same place, you set the home point, it'll come back and land right at that home point.
Okay. Your organization, how many members does it have, and where do those members come from?
So we have 8 members right now. We have 2 possibly coming on within the next month or so. And they come from, as far as location, our bylaws restrict it to our county and the surrounding counties. So as far as what backgrounds are, we have paramedics, we have flight paramedics, we have pilots, we have a couple that are just administrative professionals, like that's just what they do. And that's another reason that we formed the way that we did. Something that I learned in the military is that in order to have a functioning team, so like for our department, if we just had 10 pilots, we'd be completely unsuccessful. There's all the administrative stuff, the background stuff, the financial side of it. Like, we want somebody for each of those things instead of just having a bunch of pilots. So.
Oh, right. All right. So you have or aspire to have some people whose responsibilities might be things other than just flying the drone.
Yeah, so we only have 3 pilots right now. The rest they have other duties, whether they're specific to the water rescue stuff or the underwater stuff, or we have a fire rescue specialist or a liaison. We had a law enforcement liaison, which was we're replacing him because he ended up moving for personal reasons. He moved to Florida. But that's something, like, if you look at our organization structure, like I said, we're very similar to a volunteer fire department until you get down in the weeds of it. And we have personnel that are very specific. So,
okay. What are some of the things that are going on behind the scenes that maybe someone who's interested in having a program like this or getting something kicked off like this, what are some of the behind the scene things that are happening that are necessary to require that you run both a safe and effective operation toward this type of service that you do? I got a feeling that what I'm seeing is just the surface of a much more complex process and organization.
yeah. So when we get called to, or we get dispatched to a call, the incident commander and the people on ground, they see us show up, put a drone in the air or in the water or whatever, and then they see that part of it. So what they don't see is all the maintenance records that go into that are required by the FAA, all the log books, the flight time hours being recorded. And then even at dispatch, we don't just jump in our vehicle and go. We have a ton of stuff that needs done beforehand or on the way. Weather checks, and then continuous weather monitoring, because we all know weather changes. And, we have a coverage area of about 2,200 square miles right now. So the weather here might not be the same as it is on scene. So we have to take that into account. We have to do those checks. We have to request waivers. So one of those waivers could be if weather minimums aren't met, but it's still flyable. So let's say the cloud ceiling is at 400 foot, but we're doing a very specific search or operation, a fire, let's say, that weather, that minimum isn't met. So we have to request a waiver through the FAA before we can ever fly in those conditions. So let's say that it is at a fire, if the incident commander wants us at that fire to fly, then we have to do, in the background, we need to do a waiver request, an emergency waiver request, send that in, and then get it approved before we can ever take off.
Is that process minutes, hours, or days?
No, they have it set up so that basically we have a pre-filled form. We just punch in the specific info that we need, and then we email it off. And then that's where the admin professionals and the other people who aren't pilots in our department, they can help us out with doing that stuff while we're driving to the scene or while we're getting set up. They can be working all that stuff behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. And I think you said earlier, but I want to make sure that I understood it right, that there are incidents now that as the fire departments are being dispatched initially to the call, you're getting a dispatch as well. So it's not like they get on the scene, say, oh, it'd be nice to have a drone here, and then call you sort of after the fact. You're getting these upfront notifications to respond even on their report of something. Did I understand that right? Yep.
It's just like any other mutual aid company or department. And I think you kind of talked about this in the class we had where when you went to a fire district, you kind of mentioned like, hey, it'd be a good idea to have automatic aid, right? Is that what you called it?
Yeah.
So basically the same thing. And with the fire service, everything is very traditional. So initially they were a little hesitant to do that. even though they've been nothing but supportive for our program. Now that they've seen that it can be valuable to them, a lot of departments around here are super proactive, and they've added us to either their first alarm or their second alarm structure fires, searches, land rescues, wildfires are the big one that's coming up real soon. So yeah, we're starting to see that. We're starting to really see that a lot. Actually, it's probably, my fear is it's gonna take hold a little quicker than we can be manned. As far as like I said, we all have full-time jobs, so that's where the recruiting comes into play. I need to get some more people recruited, but yeah. So
do you keep? Do you have more than one drone?
Yeah. So right now we have 4 drones. Now they aren't all department owned, so some of those are through agreements, but they're available. We have 1 department owned drone, and then, like I said, we're trying to fund another one, so we would have 2. The idea is it's almost like, if you think about like a search, you have a hasty. So the idea is, and then the way we do it right now is we keep a drone in the vehicle. Like, I have a drone in my vehicle all the time. If there's a call, I can just go to the call. Eventually, when we have an actual facility and all that stuff, we'll have the primary drone and vehicle and whatever that we have as part of our department will be there. And then when we get dispatched, we'll have a drone pilot immediately respond with a smaller, probably less capable drone to get things started. And then somebody will go to the department, pick up the vehicle and all the other equipment, and then respond, and then continue from there.
Okay. When you are dispatched to assist or be part of an emergency, how does your organization integrate with the incident command? I would imagine that fire departments are used to having like commanders and safety officers and operations and all the things that would be the normal part of incident command, and then in comes this this technology that's available to us. Are you connected? Like, are you at the hip of the commander with your technology so they immediately can see what you're doing, or do you kind of stand alone and then report back to them the things that you're seeing? Or how do you know what their wishes are when you get to the scene? How does all that communications and logistics integrate?
So I can answer that with 2 words. It depends. No, so we've gone to, well, I guess I'll go back from me being a paramedic. I know all these guys pretty well anyway. We started from the very beginning. We reached out to the fire personnel and emergency services and immediately tried building a good relationship with these guys, on top of what we already had. So, and I'm probably going to get off track and go down a rabbit hole here a little bit, but right from communications all the way up, we went to our county fire association, and we started out, before we were ever a department, we were just the one-man show with the drone. We got authorization to use their fire frequencies so that we had communication with them. So, because we tried it without that beforehand, and we quickly learned that communication, you have to have radio communication for anything to integrate and to work. I mean, you just do. So they were totally on board with it and gave us that authorization. And then from there, we've tried to do everything, as we don't cut corners on anything as far as working with the fire departments or any other agent. It's not just fire departments, but that's the one we think of most. Everything, like I said, we don't cut corners. So we try to pre-plan and pre-work with them on everything so that they know exactly what they're getting when we come. Our whole goal and purpose as a department is to support whoever we're going. We don't get calls that only us are handling. We're supporting somebody. So let's say a typical, let's say a search. when we get dispatched for a search, we'll reach out to that incident commander ahead of time. And I have cards that we've given out we give them out as an outreach thing, but it's basically a credit card looking card, but it has the very basic information that we need on there. Basically what's on there is it's a little pocket card that we hand out like candy. And then when they say, hey, we could really use a drone or the underwater or whatever, it asks, we have the dispatchers ask them, okay, where's the incident at, the exact location, what type of incident is it, and then who's the incident commander or the point of contact, because it might not be the incident commander that we need to talk to, and then what radio channel are we talking to them on. So that's the integration part. And then what resources do they want from us? You know, if we get dispatched to a park for something and we don't know what the incident is, we might get there with the drone and find out that it's a water rescue or something that they want underwater. So we put that in there. And then I think the last thing is any special circumstances. The big one being, are there any other aircraft that are coming? We don't want the state police helicopter coming and us not know about it. If we know about it ahead of time, we coordinate with them and it's no issue. So we get to the scene, we do all that stuff on the way as far as reaching out to them via radio or telephone if we need to, but cell service here isn't always the greatest. So we rely a lot on radio. We get there, on the way, we find out where they want us. We get there, we meet up with them, and then we find out how exactly we can support them. You know, what's their goal? It's not about what we want to do. It's about what they need. So if it's a search, they tell us, hey, we'd like you to, one example was we have a stretch of railroad tracks where this kid was missing. And the incident commander wanted us to just fly that set of railroad tracks and rule that out right off the bat. So that's just one example of how we can support them based on what they want. So we knock that out. And then of course we give recommendations like, hey, we've done this, but have you thought about, doing this? Mm-hmm. So another example is we had a commercial structure fire, and I literally got there with the drone and stood next to the incident commander for the entire fire. And he was looking at the screen that I have, and I was just working directly with him. We were zooming in on the names of firefighters on the roof. And then he was calling up to them and telling them, hey, you have a hot spot directly to the right of firefighter so-and-so, move your, go over there, hit that or whatever. Or, nobody wants micromanagement, but we could give them huge situational awareness. They were standing 3 feet from the hot spot in the roof and they were working on something that was just steaming, but it wasn't hot anymore, so.
Mm-hmm. And you're seeing this hot spot through thermal imaging technology on the drone?
Yes. Yep. So then as the incident commander, he's standing right next to me. He can see, because we do a ton of outreach. So these guys know kind of what they're looking at on the screen. At a basic level, they know like, hey, if it's this color, that's a hot spot, or I can tell them. Mm-hmm. And then they can address whatever operations they want going on from there without having to climb on the roof and be up there. They can manage the entire incident right there next to me. Mm-hmm. Now, with that said, there are times when we aren't right next to them and we do everything by radio. And that can be because of terrain, maybe the incident command. I can think of one place. There's a lot of searches here in this one place, and it's basically in the middle of the forest. And in order for us to fly there, we would have to get a waiver. So we usually go to a different location, and then that way we can fly. We can see the drone and not have to go through the process of getting that waiver. And then we just talk via radio and work with the incident commander that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Something in the back of my mind seems to have me thinking that a program like this using technology like that might be attractive to a young person who's used to gaming and using technology? Are you finding that you're able to get any interest from young people, or at least technology interested or savvy people, to be part of this, or is that something that's on your mind?
Yep. So that's been a big priority of ours. So one thing that we're seeing around here, and I think it's nationwide, is just lack of volunteerism in general, for whatever reason. But when you look at the lack of the younger generation, like I said, I became an EMT at 16. I wanted to be in the fire department and run an ambulance and all that stuff at 16. I think that's not necessarily where kids' interests are at now as much. So what we're doing, we're trying to leverage the fact that, we always hear kids nowadays just want to sit inside and play video games. I've heard that. I've probably said it. So the way we're looking at it is why not leverage that? So they have an interest in technology, in cell phones, in social media, and video games. Why not leverage that to help public safety and show them that, okay, these skills that you have, they might not even realize they have a skill that's valuable for anything. Show, especially in rural Pennsylvania, show them that skill, they might be really good at whatever, Call of Duty or whatever. Show them how that can relate to volunteering for public safety or future careers, and instead of them thinking about it narrow-mindedly as just that's what they do for fun, they can put it to good use. We do that through a few different ways. So like I said, we do a lot of outreach, but one of the big outreach programs that we do is one of the drone manufacturers, DJI, has a very high-end drone simulator that uses the actual drone controller. You plug it into the computer, and it's literally like flying the drone. Everything except the fact that when you crash, you don't have to do an insurance claim. So, so there was a free version of that. We were using that a lot. We would go to, I don't know if you do you know what the National Night Out program is?
Yep, sure do.
Okay. So they have that here. And last year for National Night Out, we have a hitch mounted, like a trailer hitch mounted TV stand. And we had a big screen TV set up right on the edge of the lake with the simulator set up. So we had kids coming down, standing on the beach, flying a drone without ever flying a drone. They're just doing it all on the big screen TV. Everything is literally as exact and precise as it would be if you were flying a drone. And that was huge. Well, and like I said, that was the free version. We recently got a grant from, it's called the Tioga County Partnership for Community Health. And we talked with them and kind of told them how this could be good for volunteerism and get kids interested and stuff like that. They actually funded the full enterprise version of the simulator, which has a lot more features. And it also has a very specific search and rescue scenario section of it. So you can do search and rescue, like we can set up an entire search and rescue call for kids and let them run it. So
nice.
Yeah.
I could see there becoming a unmanned technology club in a high school somewhere.
Yeah. So that would be, there probably already is. I'm sure there probably is, maybe not a public safety version of it. So that's what we want to drive them to, is that public safety side of it, and show them how that can be helpful. But also, when I was a kid, so our local high school has an aviation program. They didn't have that when I went to school, but if they did, I think it could have set some kids on a totally different path. And I think they're doing a great job with that. And this is just one more way that we can mentor some kids and get them headed maybe in a path that they never even thought of. So
Right. Are you familiar with exploring programs through the Boy Scouts?
yeah, so like as far as the police department and fire departments and stuff like that. Yep.
Yeah. I wonder if if you had interest in mentoring young people, and I don't, just adding to the load of what you do already, but if the Boy Scouts have or would authorize an exploring post for unmanned technology like that, and there could be, just like their explorer post for police and fire, which is kind of like, an opportunity to learn and immerse in that profession.
Right.
If there'd be the interest, it's just, and they may already have that, I don't know, that given how popular the technology is becoming, there's probably already out there exploring posts dedicated to that topic for young people. It's just curious, something that just popped into my mind, because I was thinking like these young people that might have interest in service, but really don't want to be a firefighter or a police officer, could take their interest in service and combine it with their interest in technology, and you've got the perfect making of an explorer post to give them those opportunities.
Right.
Is there anything that you would want to share that you haven't shared yet? Because I simply didn't ask the right question.
No, I think we've covered a lot of it. I think the biggest thing that I guess the biggest thing that we're doing is we're doing it differently. As far as, we talked about, just like the Explorer thing, there's probably, so we don't necessarily, I don't know that it falls under the Explorer program in our area, but we have, a lot of the fire departments have a junior program. So, which is basically the same thing. And I think they have fallen under that Explorer program in some cases. That's how I got into it. So that's something that we're looking at. Since we're just starting out, it wasn't something we wanted to tackle right off the bat, because we want to put a little thought into it and get the insurance figured out and all that. But yeah, that's definitely something we're looking at. I think since we're a standalone department, there's probably other fire departments that have drone programs where kids are getting exposed to that already through the fire department, or either the junior program or the Explorer program, whatever it's called at that point. But yeah, so that's definitely something we're looking at. We really want to spark the interest of kids and show them that there's some cool technology out there, and they can use it for good. So
yeah, right on. And who knows where it might end up. Someone might be inspired to go to school to become a pilot based on their exposure to use of the unmanned technology. Ron, I want to thank you for being with me today and for sharing this passionate work that you're doing, and especially the interesting component of your being a standalone organization separate from any individual police or fire department, and how that kind of gives you an autonomous ability to run your own organization. If somebody wanted to learn more about that, how could they find you or find something about the organization? Because I didn't ask if you have a website or anything like that. How could they get connected with you if they're like, oh, this sounds like something that we should do in our county? How do they get to you?
Yep. So we have a website. It's drone-50.com. They can go there, and then there's a couple contact buttons on there. They can email info@drone-50.com. They can go on social media. All of our social media names are it's our motto, I guess. It's Novus Optius. So it's new options. It's Latin for new options. So Novus, Novus, Optius, Optios. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, if you punch in that in any of those, and our department will come up. And that was just a simple way for us to have the same username for everything. So
Novus Optios.
Yes. Yep.
Huh. All right. Well, geez, I didn't know I was going to be learning Latin today. Value added.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. All right, Ron. Thanks for being with us, and I can wish you continued success in the program.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate being on.
Thank you, Chief Ron Warren, for sharing the information on how unmanned technology can help emergency responders. I want to take a moment to thank those agencies that have hosted some recent live events, including the Ohio Fire Academy, 2 different times in the last 2 months. The North Carolina Fire Chiefs Association, I got to keynote their conference, and I'm very appreciative of that. Syncrude Oil Refinery, the Fire Department Safety Officer Association Conference in Florida. I got to keynote that too, and I appreciate that. Nuclear Fuel Services, excuse me, Thomas Jefferson National Accelerator Facility, the Association of Traffic Safety Services, and the National Safety Council. If you're interested, and you might be looking to attend one of our programs, here's where we're going to be upcoming. The Alcona County Fire Chiefs Association in Michigan, the Power Test Conference in Orlando, Florida, Syncrude Oil Refinery in Fort McMurray, Alberta, Canada, and the IAFF Local 3111, Anderson Township, Ohio. You can also view the list of all the upcoming programs on the SA Matters website. If you've been along for the ride with me for a while on this show, you will quickly notice a significant reduction in the number of programs that I'm doing. Typically, the list of the upcoming programs would be 8 to 10 per month. Last year, we trained a cadre of master instructors, including Jeremy Saw, who's going to be interviewed in our next episode. The goal was to have the master instructors presenting situational awareness programs so I could slow my transition eventually toward retirement over the next few years. One of our certified master instructors, police officer Drew Moldenauer, and I joined forces to author a book to help police officers improve situational awareness in high-risk decision-making. How smart police officers use situational awareness to improve safety is available now on our website store at samatters.com and also available on Amazon. If someone important in your life is a law enforcement officer or a security officer, you're going to want to pick up this book as a gift for them. If you're interested in hosting a live event or a virtual program, just click on the Contact Us tab at the top of the SA Matters homepage, and I'll give you a call. Finally, remember to check our show notes for how to subscribe to our newsletter and how to follow us on social media. There we share ideas about how to improve situational awareness and how to make better decisions under stress and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving. Well, that's it. Episode 391 of the Situational Awareness Matters show is complete. Thank you again to my guest, Chief Ron Warren, for sharing information about unmanned emergency services. And thank you to our viewers and listeners for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really do appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters show with Dr. Richard Gassaway. If you're interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit his website, samatters.com. If you're interested in booking Dr. Gassaway for a program, or if you would like to be a guest on his show, click the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage.